Welcome to this week's episode of Key to the Pastcast. I am Megan Reed, Executive Director of the Trumbull County Historical Society.
And I am Ryan McLennan, the Director of Outreach and Operations at the Trumbull County Historical Society.
I think this might be our first episode since your change of title, which...
It is, so that's why it came out weird and wrong, but it's fine. We'll leave it. It's good. This week, we have Tamara Shavers on to talk about her dad, Earnie, and her whole family, and to talk a little bit about their upbringing in Braceville. And I don't know, it was a wonderful episode. It really was.
It was. And it's super interesting to hear what's going on in Braceville right now. The Braceville Community Foundation acquired Earnie Shavers' childhood home, and they're in the process of renovating that building. So it's very timely to have Tamara on to talk about all of this.
Rather than have us read off Earnie Shavers' professional boxing record or read a Wikipedia page bio of Earnie, I think it's best that we hear from some of his competitors and Earnie himself talking about his boxing career. I would like to add that this interview is a little bit less about his career and more about who he was as a father, as a husband, as a member of the community. But I think it's important that we highlight his career and his legacy. The clips you're going to hear come from Fighting Center. The first one has Muhammad Ali talking about who was the hardest punching boxer he ever faced. And the second clip is Earnie himself talking about his record.
Who's the strongest?
Earnie Shavers.
Really?
Yeah, man. I didn't really believe he was as good as he was. I predicted he was one around 7. But he was good. He took all I had and he hit real hard.
The one greatest punch I have ever seen is owned by a man named Earnie Shavers. I saw Earnie Shavers hit Bernardo Machado so hard his glove imploded. I saw Earnie Shavers hit Randy Tex Cobb so hard his head spun around like Michael Keaton in Beetlejuice. Randy Tex Cobb could take a punch. Earnie Shavers could give one.
The second clip is Earnie himself.
Tell me who you are, baby. Hello, my friends. My name is Earnie Shavers. I was a fighter during the 70s. From Muhammad Ali and Larry Holmes. I got more knockouts than anybody. I had 89 fights, 74 wins, 68 knockouts, 33 in the first round. So don't get me mad. Thank you, man. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Thank you.
Tamara Lynn Shavers was born on April 18th, 1965, to Laverne Payne and Earnie Shavers. She is the oldest of their 5 daughters. She was born in Warren, Ohio, and at the age of 8, Earnie and Laverne moved Tamara and her sisters back to their roots, Braceville, Ohio. In Braceville, Tamara learned the core values of love and family instilled by her grandparents and the Braceville community. Tamara committed to 28 years of service in the hospitality industry as a general manager for Hilton Choice and IHG Hotels before resigning in 2022. She stepped out on the faith taught and is now the proud operator of her own hospitality and concierge service. Tamara is the mother of 3, Deandra Johnson, Mark Johnson, and Alex Shavers, and the proud grandma to 4-year-old Johanna Colbert.
All right, so we are super happy to be here today with Tamara Shavers. Tamara is the daughter of Braceville native Earnie Shavers, and she's also a member of the Braceville Community Foundation, who's doing really exciting things out in Braceville Township. So welcome, Tamara.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you so much, Ryan and Megan. I'm grateful that you invited me, and I'm honored.
I've gotten to know you a little bit through board meetings with the Braceville Community Foundation, but I'm really curious about how your dad was as a person, not as a boxer, as the celebrity that everyone knows, but if you could describe your dad a little bit in terms of who he was as a father, as a husband, as a member of the community, I think that's a good place to start.
I can, and that's actually the part that I'm most comfortable with. I have to say that, growing up as the oldest daughter of Earnie Shavers, or I still call him Daddy, in our community, he was known as D. He's Earnie D. Shavers, so he was known as D. But my dad was very down to earth, very humble. And so we did all of the normal things that you do. We were taught to mow the lawn. We were taught to stack wood. We were We went fishing. So my dad did all of those neat things. There wasn't anything spoken of sports, especially boxing at home. We were just treated as just normal people. My mother played a large role in that as well, as keeping us humble. But my dad was a helper and a giver. And it was to the extreme sometimes, but that was just who he was. He was always laughing. Sometimes he would start to tell the corniest joke and he would laugh so hard he couldn't get it out. And when he finally did, we would all look at him like, what? Really, Daddy? But he was a prankster. He was just a really down-to-earth man. And it all started with his roots from Braceville. My grandparents moved to Braceville from Alabama. So my dad was very down-to-earth.
I was just going to ask you that. Can you give us a little bit more about how you think growing up in Braceville influenced him? Are there specifics that you can point to?
Absolutely. So the story of my family, my dad and his family moving to Braceville was a little horrific, but it was actually a great thing in the end. My grandfather, Curtis Shaver, and my grandmother, Willie Bell Herbert Shavers, they were actually sharecroppers in Garland, Alabama. And my dad was the 10th of the children. He was 5 years old when they moved to Braceville. My grandparents had an altercation with a white man in Alabama, and my grandfather got angry and actually pulled a shotgun on this gentleman. So, in the early 50s, late 40s, early 50s, that was unheard of. My great-grandfather, which was Ben Shavers, he actually was a porter on the train. And so they were able to get my grandpa Curtis out of Alabama that night. He came to Braceville because we already had family there. My great-uncle Daniel Shavers lived in Braceville on what we call the lower allotment. And so my grandfather came to live with him to get out of Garland, Alabama. Now, my dad has shared before, and I hadn't heard any other family members talk about it, but the Klan actually came to their home to kind of scare my grandmother, my dad and his siblings, looking for my grandfather. They actually came to Newton Falls to look for my grandfather as well, but some of the men in the community and my Uncle Dan, they kind of influenced him that he needed to leave.
Wow.
So that's how our family came to Braceville. My dad was 5 years old, and later my grandfather worked and was able to send for the family to come. I do remember stories of my grandmother sharing with me that my dad was exactly how he was as an adult. She said she can remember at 5 telling him to sit down and to be quiet, and he was walking around saying hi to people and greeting them and just very friendly. So, and that's exactly how he was. But that's how we ended up in Braceville. And that community is the roots of our morals and our values, our core values in our family. My mother also from Braceville. So everything that we learned in our family, everything my parents taught us, are the roots that we learned from the families that we grew up around in Braceville.
That's really fascinating. The stories of how people arrive where they are and just like the traumas that people go through is really fascinating, and sort of how that goes through generations to the point where, like, you're telling this us the story now. But I'm sure that means something to you too, like understanding and knowing what your ancestors went through is like a really powerful thing.
Absolutely. We were never taught to have hatred in our hearts. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about this the other day. We grew up around a very diverse group of people in our life. And I mean, people coming over for dinner. My dad had a lot of Italian and Greek friends, and we just grew up around a wide variety of different people and cultures. And we were never taught to have hatred in our hearts. And so my sisters and I, we grew up basically the same way, being givers and just understanding and seeing people as individuals versus, something that was carried down by their ancestors. We were never taught any of that.
One other thing I wanted to ask you about, I mean, we'll have many other conversations about your dad, but in your article, you mentioned that like the pieces fit together for your dad and mom to meet. And so I sort of wanted to follow that up, if that's okay.
Oh, absolutely. It's the perfect love story. And I love to this day for my mother to share it with me. So my mother grew up in the upper part of Braceville, right there on Braceville Robinson Road. And the way that she tells us is that my dad was known for going around in the community helping neighbors, especially the elderly. So he would chop firewood, he would bale hay, he would shovel coal, anything that the elderly needed in the community. My dad was the young teenager guy that would do that. So my mom says that one day she happened to notice this really cute boy on a tractor in the neighbor's yard mowing. And she said to herself, "Oh, that's that Shavers guy." And so, so my dad, my mother went to First Baptist Church in Braceville, and my dad would go into choir practice. And so he started to walk her home. And that's when they met, and that was the love story that got started. She shared that one summer, I think they were getting a little too serious, and my grandfather, my mother's father, decided that she needed to go to Cleveland, Ohio, where her older siblings had already, started their life and lived. So for the summer, they sent her to Cleveland to get her away from my dad. And
didn't work.
He actually had one of her cousins to drive him up to Cleveland, and so that didn't work.
That's funny.
That's really funny. How old were they when they met?
So my dad was 3 years older than my mother. He was about 18, and so my mom was 16. Two of her really dear friends there in Braceville share that they would be in class. My mom went to Braceville High School, would be in class, and they could hear my dad. My dad was really into cars and racing, and so he always had the souped-up car, but they shared that they could hear my dad's car coming down the highway. And once Mr. Lopez actually had him to leave the grounds because he pulled into the parking lot with his souped-up car waiting for my mom to get out of class. So, but yeah, they were 18 and 16 when they met.
It certainly sounds like your mother was your father's first love and you guys as kids. But where did the love of boxing come from?
So my dad was actually one of the first 100 people to be hired at General Motors. And, at that time, that was pretty exciting. And they were married. They were expecting me and got married. And my dad had this job, and he just did not like it at all. And my mother was very upset with him because he quit. He was, yeah. So they have this new baby, and then my dad just up and quit his job. But the supervisor actually came to our home, my mom states, that looking for my dad, said he's a really great worker, and I hated that he didn't come back. And my mom had no idea that he had quit because he would get up every morning and go and do odd and end jobs, but go to the racetrack. He was racing cars, drag racing.
That's funny.
And so when she found out, she was extremely upset. But he told her, "This is what I want to do." And so he kept buying cars and rearranging them and making them go faster. And my mother said, "You have one more time to do this, and I'm going back home." So my dad, one day on his way to the racetrack, ended up going with some friends to Rebecca Williams, which was a gym at the time. And he goes to the gym, and one of the gentlemen in there that was training some of the guys said, "You look like you can really hit." So my dad did. He got in the ring, and that's where the boxing started.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but he did that because my mom threatened, like, if you don't do something, I'm leaving. So that's how he got started in boxing.
And from there, was it like instantly he knew that this is something he wanted to do, or was it just like, this is a fun hobby?
No, he knew instantly. And from the stories that both of my parents shared, he was very good at it. The Golden Gloves, and he started to. I can remember. I don't remember my dad doing anything else but boxing. I can say that as a young child, I didn't really know what my dad did. I knew that. I knew that he went away to train, and sometimes we would go to Youngstown. There was a gym there. And we would go, but it really never clicked. What does he do? So, but that's all that I've known my dad to do. And he just started progressing from there. It started with the Golden Gloves, and then he would have fights in Cleveland and Youngstown. I can remember faintly there was once it could have probably an exhibition fight right there at Newton Falls High School. I can remember going and still not really sure what was going on, but I knew that, my dad was the center of attention there. So, I do remember once I went to Vaughn Elementary School in the 3rd grade. I'll never forget. And something happened where my dad needed to come to school to get me. And when he came into my classroom, everybody crowded around him. And I remember thinking, what in the world and why? I mean, it's Daddy. What's going on? And I remember asking one of my classmates, we're still very good friends, what is this? And she said, I don't know. But again, it didn't click that my dad was this big to do. But yeah, it's just, as far as I've ever known, he's always been a boxer.
Did he have like a persona can you explain his persona in Braceville? Like, how did people see him there? Like, once he started his career?
Because my parents were humble people and from humble beginnings, we never allowed the fame to overtake us at our house. I think I can share one story that would kind of help with that. So this was later on after my dad had actually fought Muhammad Ali, and that's when things really got like huge.
Mm-hmm.
He had some other fights along the way with Ken Norton, but after the Ali fight, things were really, really big. And so we went on a family vacation to New York, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And we were on Broadway. We were actually going to see the play The Wiz. And Stephanie Mills was only 16 years old then. She was the star of the play. And so we got out of the limo to go into the theater. And I remember a gentleman saying, "Hey, you're Earnie Shavers." And my dad turned around with his big grin and he said, "Yes, I am." And out of nowhere, people were everywhere. I mean, they were pushing and shoving us. And so the theater attendants came out to kind of help us get into the theater. My dad stayed out and signed autographs. And I remember going into the theater thinking, okay, he is a big deal. And it didn't feel good to be pushed. And so it was kind of like, oh, we get to brag now. And but my dad kind of missed most of the play. He finally came in and sat down, and we got backstage passes to meet Stephanie Mills. And that was when I realized everywhere that we went, people recognized him. And that was when I realized, like, oh, he's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, it's really funny. I feel comfortable sharing this, but I remember once being the disgruntled teenager, as we probably all were at 15 and 16.
Right.
And my mom and I were in Strauss, which was there in Warren.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted a pair of Gloria Vanderbilt jeans. At the time, they were like $70, $80. And with four sisters, and she said, "You're not getting those." And I remember thinking, what in the world? My friends have them? And what do you mean? And so I said to her, "Well, I thought we were rich." And my mom said,
Wrong thing to say, I think.
Right.
yes, because my mom said, "Well, your dad and I are, but you're not, and you're not getting the jeans."
That's a good answer.
So So that was her way of settling me down. Like, yeah, we're a big deal, but we're still humble people.
Yeah, that's so funny.
So, but I can remember we hung out a lot in Orwell, Ohio at the Don King training camp and farm. So we were around a lot of people, but it was just a normal thing. We were there a lot. I mean, there were other fighters there and their families. And I remember Don King's wife, Mrs. Henrietta King. We called her, of course, Miss King. She was very kind, and she showed my mom a lot of the ropes behind the scenes on how to, handle things and people. And so things were always just very normal for us. It was never, we were never taught to, to be uppity and allow that thing to take control.
Did you ever, I'm assuming you watched your dad in matches.
Absolutely. And it did not feel good at all. We were never allowed to go to the fight except his second fight with Larry Holmes. And I'm kind of glad my mom never allowed us to go to the others because it was devastating. Ringside, you could hear everything, you could see everything. And so it was because, that's my dad. And so to see him taking hits and, it wasn't what you would think it is. It wasn't good at all.
Yeah.
It sounds like maybe after he retired, he might not have talked about it a lot, and if he did he have particular fights that he thought were very tough? Obviously, like everyone knows who Muhammad Ali is, but were there people that he just thought, man, if I had done this or if I had done that, I could have won that, or vice versa, where I won those fights because I was just a better fighter? Did he ever talk about fights that way?
He did. Actually, the Ali fight. My dad talked about the things that he could have done differently in the ring. He could have, I think he went into the ring just over assured. And so he didn't focus as much as he probably should have, even though he did very well. But he would mention that sometimes, that if he had have done just, a couple of things differently. But the great part about that is, and this is something else that's still puzzling to me to this day, is that in the ring, of course, they're fighters, but outside of the ring, they're friends. My dad and Larry Holmes were probably the best of friends. And amazing. So, and even Ali, when he would have events, my dad was the first that he would call. So that was a little strange. How can you knock somebody's block off, but you're really friends? So that was just they understood this is our profession, but outside of the ring, this is not who we are. So
that's
that
a good
was
lesson. I think maybe
it is a good lesson. Yeah, just part of it.
Absolutely. I don't remember him saying anything negative about anybody. About disliking anybody, or I just remember him always saying that, nope, we're friends, or good things. I remember him sharing that he learned a lot from Ali. He learned a lot, from other fighters. And my dad definitely earned his place in the room. I've heard stories that, this is so funny. I've heard stories, Larry Holmes shared a story that they, because before my dad fought Holmes, they actually trained together. And so there were other fighters that they all trained. Usually it would be in the northern part of New York or East Liverpool. But they shared that my dad was not a card playing person. He wasn't. So I guess they were all playing cards, and they were teaching my dad this card game. And they were playing for money, I heard. And so he kind of mastered the game. And so they were trying to trick him out of his money. And he realized, even though he didn't understand the card game, he realized that they were trying to get his money. So he made a comment, because nobody messed with my dad. So he made a comment that, you better put my money on the table right now. And Mr. Holmes shared that's what they did. And nobody, everybody understood he meant business. But yeah, he just, I can remember times where my dad needed to be a little firm with other people. We were at an event once in New York, and this reporter got to be a little abrupt and rude and just really disrespectful to everybody. And my dad had this way of just kind of smiling, but giving you a look like, I mean, business. And I remember the reporter he just kept on and kept on. And so the next thing I know, my dad had him in the corner of the room with this look on his face, whispering something to him. And the guy settled down. But he didn't get loud. He was not a loud person. He wasn't boisterous, but he was very subtle about when he meant business.
I kind of want to ask a question about, I know we're talking about your dad, but we're also talking about your family. So I want to ask a question about your mom and like her role in your lives, and then basically how she ended up feeling about, she went to the fights, I imagine, right? And how she felt about of being next to the ring and seeing, the person she loved, getting hit over and over again. So
they were very emotional for her. So one of the things when my dad would get ready for a fight, it affected the whole family, because first of all, he would be away for 3 to 4 months at a time, sometimes 5. So he would be away in training, which means my mom was running everything. So she had to learn some things. She had to learn how to run the household, and she had to learn about the behind the scenes of the fight game and how to handle the business side of it. And if you've never met my mom, she is this 5-foot little firecracker. So growing up, people would say, ask us, how is it going with Earnie Shavers as your dad? And my sisters and I would say, it's not my dad that you have to worry about. So my mom she was the glue to everything behind my dad. She is the person that pushed him, that encouraged him, that kept him focused. There is an incident once my mom shared that in between changing management. So when my dad got started, he was managed by a gentleman out of Youngstown, Blackie Gennaro, and Dean Chance. And so in between shifting management to Don King, negotiating was going on, and my dad got really frustrated. And so he came home once with our little car and all of his equipment in the car. And he was done. He was going to quit. He was just going to get a job and be done with it. And my mom said, I don't know what you think you're doing, but we are this far in the game. So while he's taking the stuff out of the car, she's putting it back in. Nope, you're going back. So she is what held my dad together during the tough times and being there at the fights. There was an incident where my dad, the first time that he broke his jaw, was pretty serious. He was training in New York, and so my mom flew there, and when my dad woke up in the hospital, he shared with her how happy he was to see her there, that, all these things were going on. He broke his jaw in a lot of pain probably, and, away from home. So my mom, she knew when to be there. She knew when to be firm. She knew when to be compassionate. And that's how she was with all of us, not just my dad. So she is definitely the glue to my dad and the cheerleader that my dad would not have been Earnie Shavers without my mom.
It's nicely said.
Yeah, it is.
I kind of have a light question now, which is, when he retired, did he continue to buy cars and fix them up and drag cars?
Good question.
No, but he knew how to fix everything on the car. He could my parents were very, everywhere that we lived, we always had this huge yard. We always had gardens. So, and we always did the work ourselves. And so that was another time my sisters and I were like, why can't we just hire somebody? And my dad would say, because you need to know how to do things yourself. And my mother would say the same. So they were very much into yard work, and that was therapeutic for them. But he didn't do any more working on cars, but he could tell you anything about the car. He could tell you what needed to be done, who can fix it, and he could share all that with you.
It's a handy skill.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think to this day, we know how to change the oil in a tire.
Then the lesson sunk in, I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Is there anything else about his career that we haven't covered that you'd want to talk about, or like a certain moment that you haven't mentioned yet?
Actually, there is. And thank you for asking me that. There's something that anytime that I talk about my dad, this story just really sticks with me because it taught me a lot about being a giving person and a good person all of my life. So in between bites, my dad would come home and just to unwind, we always did what we call country rides. And of course, in those days, their seatbelts were not required. So we would go to Paris, Ohio, or Bloomfield, anywhere where it was hilly. And my dad would drive up and down the hills. And so we would pretend it was a roller coaster. And it was like, it was the best thing ever. It sounds a little corny, but we look forward to that. And it was typically on a Saturday. But one particular Saturday, we all piled in the car and we're taking our country drive. And we passed this gentleman, we passed a farm, and you could see a gentleman out in the field, something with his tractor. I don't even know, you couldn't see something was wrong. You just saw a man out in the field with his tractor. So my dad drove by, and he turned around, and he pulled into this man's driveway, and he kind of jogged out to the field with the gentleman, and he's out there for a little while, and then he comes jogging back. The man gets on his tractor and kind of drives off. So we're there a while. He gets in the car. My mom says, she's a little frustrated, and she says, so Ernie, do you know this man? Why did you pull in here? And he just looks over at her. My dad had this way of saying things very lesson-like, but a little sarcastic, and he just said, Laverne, the man needed help, and I helped him. Now, how he knew that, I don't know. Whatever the man was doing on his tractor, my dad helped him, got it started, and he got in the car, and we drove off like that was just the norm. Mm-hmm. And I remember always thinking that to this day, if somebody needs help, you don't ask questions. You don't need to decide what they're going to do with the resource. You just do it. And so that was like a very valuable lesson that I learned from that day. And I feel like there's a God-given reason why that story sticks with me all the time, because it was just very nonchalant, like, okay, yep, we're going to do this. My sister shares that she lives in California. My dad has been there for different events, and there was a gentleman once that literally asked for my dad's tie, and he just took it off and gave it to him. Like, no big deal. I can always get another tie. So I can remember if there were any disputes going on in our house, it would be my mom, voicing her opinion about my dad doing that, giving things and doing things for people. There is one story that I would love to share, and I know that we, may be pressed for time, but this is a perfect example. There was, I want to say it was in the 70s. It was one of the worst blizzards ever in Ohio. And I can remember that we were, at the time, our house, we had this huge fireplace in our den. My parents had actually just had it put in. And so we kind of moved everything to the den, and that's where we slept, and that's where we stayed because it was warm, and it was, we were trying to figure out what to do in this blizzard. Mm-hmm. So about the third day in, and everybody is, stuck in their houses. About the third day in, my dad puts on his clothes and all of his gear, and he tells my mom, I'm going out to find some groceries. And she said, how are you going to get out? And he said, I'm going to figure it out. So he gets our car out. I'm not sure how he did it. And he's going down the road to go to the store, which probably wasn't even open. And so he is gone all day. I mean, just all day. My mom is getting really worried and, thinking maybe he got stuck somewhere. So late that night, about 11 or 12, he finally comes in. We hear the garage door open, and my dad kicking his boots with the snow off. And he comes in the house, and my mom's like, well, where have you been? And what happened? And you had me worried. And he said, you are never going to believe what happened. So he's driving, and this family is walking. The lady, her father was passing away, transitioning, and he was in Florida, and they were trying to find a ride to the airport, which probably couldn't have gotten out. And so she could get to spend her dad's last days with him in Florida. So my dad drove them to the Cleveland airport, helped them to get their tickets, and they ended up going to Florida to be with her dad. And so, but weeks later, we got a letter in the mail where this lady shared her story that they made it in time, and she was able to see her dad before he passed. And she could not thank my dad enough that he got them to the airport, and not only that, but helped them to get their tickets. So that was just another story that showed exactly how my dad was. It didn't cross his mind that, I need to worry about me and get back home to my family. And, we were in a safe place, but this family needed that. And so that's the kind of giver that he was. So, and we still have that letter, as a matter of fact, of that. So yeah, that was, pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I was going to make a joke that he found another tractor that needed help.
He probably would have pulled up in the driveway with it.
Driving a family to the airport is better.
He definitely, as I mentioned before, he was definitely a prankster. Nothing was beyond the limits. He actually, in his car dealing, someone, I guess they owed him some car parts or money or something, so they gave him their horse as payment. So we have this horse with nowhere to keep it. And we were all at my grandmother's. Our family tradition was we would all gather at my grandmother's, my father's siblings, everybody. And so the men, my dad and his brothers would take care of all of the yard work outside. My aunts, the ladies would take care of everything inside. And then after everything was done, my grandmother would make this huge dinner. So it would be homemade biscuits, fried chicken, black eyed peas and rice. It'd be everything. And we would all have this big spread on her patio. So my dad, we were all in the house with the ladies, and my dad comes in the house with this horse. He brings the horse in the house, and the women are screaming and we're screaming. And my grandmother's like, something's wrong with that boy. And he just thought it was the funniest thing ever to do this. But yeah, he was definitely a prankster.
That's so funny.
It's an amazing story.
That is.
I think, I don't know what else I want to say other than it seems like the lessons that your dad and mom taught you have stayed with your siblings. And that you guys sort of continue to pass them on to the next generation, and those sort of trickle into the community. And so all I really want to say is, like, thanks to your parents for that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm grateful. They have instilled that in us. And I think that's the exciting part about the Braceville Community Foundation, is because it's not just our story. It's all of the families there. Those morals and values were instilled in all of us. And so we're able to keep that legacy going and to share our stories. And that's the most exciting part about working with a group of people that I do, my family and friends, with the community foundation, and just, being able to keep the legacy going on, not just for my dad, but the other people in the community, the Tolles family and the Stevens. And I mean, there's just so many of them. But to be able to keep that going in our community it's just, there are no words for it. It's just very rewarding.
Yeah.
I like I said, I don't have anything else, but if you want to share anything else, we're happy to. But
the only thing I want to end with is that it'll be 2 years in September when my dad passed. I miss him dearly. I can often hear him or see him. He loved the Temptations. That was always blasting from our house, our car radios. And so my dad always whistled Temptation tunes. His laugh was just heartwarming and very hearty and strong. And I just miss him saying every time that we talk that I love you, Tammy, I love you. And he would say that to all of us, of course, but I miss him dearly. And I'm grateful for the values that were instilled in my sisters and I with my dad. And I'm grateful for the experiences that we had in life. He was an amazing provider and gave us we had a great life. And I'm grateful to my dad for that.
That's a good point to end on, I think.
Maybe we'll try to fade out with a Temptation song.
Oh, we should do that. That would be awesome.
I'll try. I know what
Please don't ask me to sing.
I'll try.
I mean, it's public use, I think, so it's fine.
I'll try.
Well, Tamara, thank you so much for taking the time. This has been really wonderful. It's been great to hear your story and your dad's story and just learn a little bit from you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the both of you. And thank you for your support with us, and keep doing what you're doing. Thank you for operating in your God-given gifts.
In a bit of a departure from how we normally do this week's object highlight will be presented by me, not Megan. This week we asked Tamara to send some family photos from Earnie and Laverne and the rest of the children. And so she sent a collection of those. But for this object highlight, I just wanted to draw attention to a picture where Ernie's in his boxing robe with the 5 daughters and his wife Laverne all standing there sort of pre-fight. It looks like they're all just sort of engaged in conversation, also slightly looking like they didn't want to take a picture. But it's a really wonderful insight into a pre-match fight. We will post the rest of the photos on our website, Key to the Pastcast, through the Trumbull County Historical Society. And thank you for listening.